You're 65, single, and you have $1.5 million saved for retirement. What can you spend from your investment portfolio? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I know this gets asked quite a bit. A lot of financial planners out there, myself included, do a lot of married filing jointly scenarios. So today, I want to take some time and look at a scenario on what it means to be single and how do we apply some of the tax planning strategies and other ideas specifically to people that have different tax brackets than people who are married. If you're new here, I'm Elliot Apple, founder and financial planner of Kindness Financial Planning, and I help kind people retire to their ideal life. Let's jump into the financial plan and stay tuned throughout the video, particularly to the end where after I walk through the success of the retirement plan, what does it mean to start layering in strategies like the 0% long-term capital gains bracket and Roth conversions? So with that, let's jump into it. So here we have Anna's sample, and you can see, as I mentioned, Anna has saved $1.5 million for retirement. She has $1 million in an IRA and $500,000 in a brokerage account. She also owns her own house, which is worth about $1 million. And that does have expenses associated with it. I think that's really important to keep in mind as we look at the expenses on the next page. These are on top. So the property taxes, the annual insurance, and the annual maintenance, that's going to be included on top of what we already have outlined here that I'll go through in a moment. In terms of goals, so Anna wants to retire at 65. She wants to spend $4,000 a month. And keep in mind, this $4,000 a month is on top of those retirement expenses. We also have outline for healthcare. So that's about $6,400 per year. And I do put a placeholder in plans, whether you're single or married, some sort of long-term care costs. And I do that for a national average on top of what we're currently spending. So I know long-term care costs more than $75,000 for a lot of people out there. This is on top of the monthly expending that we've outlined. And I do this for the last 2 years of the plan. I don't necessarily want to say, hey, what happens if we get dementia and there's 10 years of this? Because it's going to make the success of the plan look a lot worse. But I also don't want to include zero expenses for this because realistically, there might be some expenses associated with it. So this is my way of sort of a placeholder or a buffer. If you are single and planning for your own, maybe you feel more comfortable with a higher expense and or for a longer period of time, or maybe you're comfortable with less. That's where it really pays to dig into the details and figure out exactly how you want to design your financial plan. In terms of vacation, so Anna in the beginning part of retirement for the first 10 years here, she wants to spend $10,000 on a vacation on top of that spending we outlined. So Anna's going to enjoy life and spend more from her investments early on in retirement, which I know can be an uncomfortable thing. We'll talk about how that can get structured here a little bit later. On top of that, Anna is charitably inclined. So we're going to assume Anna starts qualified charitable distribution starting at age 71. That's the age that she was comfortable with. Technically, she could start as early as age 70 and a half, and she's not necessarily needing to distribute money until age 73, but this is the age that she wanted to do it. So she's going to do $10,000 a year till the end of the plan. In terms of income, so Anna's going to be retired, so her salary is really not relevant here, but in terms of Social Security benefits, she did earn a pretty good salary throughout her career, so she's going to have $4,000 starting at age 70, and we'll talk about in a moment why it makes sense, particularly for Anna, to delay Social Security until 70, and this is a really important piece for her. So we'll get to that in a moment. But looking at cash flow year to year, we'll ignore the numbers here just for a moment and look at the cash flows to see what needs to come from the portfolio to explain what's happening. So we can see in early retirement here, as Anna retires, she doesn't have any income. There's no part-time income in retirement. She's delayed Social Security. You can see how she'll have a partial year in 2031 and then a full year in 2032, and that steps up. And in terms of expenses, here's everything we outlined. So that baseline, $4,000 a month. Her housing, those were the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs for it. And you can see everything's inflating there, so that does go up over time. And then the healthcare costs as well. So all in, she's in about $76,000 per year. And then on top of that, we have the goals. So vacation for that first 10 years, and then that gifting until the end of the plan. And I do, to be conservative, I run these plans stage 95. I want this to be a conservative element. If health history is in here, you can obviously shorten that. But I think a lot of people want to stretch this and stress test it to see, hey, if I do live longer than anticipated, how does that actually work out for me? And then the other thing I would outline for expenses here at the end of life, you can see it jump significantly from $156,000 to $387,000. That is that long-term care component. If I jump in here and go to the end, that healthcare, you can see the last 2 years of the plan, that amount, that $75,000 we outlined, and we've inflated that for multiple decades. That becomes $226,000 or $235,000 in the last year of life. So with all of this, what does this mean cash flow year by year in terms of Anna's investment portfolio? As you can see early on, Anna's taking everything from the investment portfolio, $85,000 the first year, $88,000 the second. That continues to go on until Social Security starts to kick in, and then she starts to take a little bit less from it. So risk is sort of going to be concentrated in those first few years of retirement, and sequence of return risk is a concern for Anna. So investment related questions here is, does Anna want to be more conservative at the beginning part of retirement so she has more certainty around where that money is going to be coming from, whether that's cash or bonds or other investments inside the investment portfolio? And then maybe once Anna starts to take less from the investment portfolio because Social Security starts to kick in, maybe that's an opportunity actually for Anna to get more aggressive. And that runs counter to a lot of the advice out there that you get more conservative as you get older. A lot of that should be based on your spending from the investment portfolio. So for her, it may make more sense as she gets older to have more allocated to stocks. Potentially, I'm not saying she has to do that, but that might be helpful, particularly as she plans for that next generation and maybe not totally spending her investment portfolio. If we go back and we review the results of this plan, it's going to run a Monte Carlo analysis. And 81% of the time, we have a really good outcome. Anna gets to do everything that she wants to do, and she's going to end up with more in her portfolio than zero. So that's important to her. And if we look at the confidence of this, how does this change throughout time? I like looking at this chart because it looks at the most likely outcome, but then also really good scenarios and really bad scenarios. And what does that look like in terms of portfolio values at different ages? So if we go out to 95 or 90, for example, median is about 1.8. Really bad part of this, so she's almost run out of money, $53,000, or $5 million or $5.5 million left in the portfolio at that time. And this is all in future dollars, but we can easily discount this back to today's dollars to see what does that look like at these corresponding ages. So that 1.5, I think I mentioned earlier, is roughly 1 million in today's dollars. So I think that's helpful. The other thing to look at is, why is this plan successful at 81%? Well, a lot of that has to do with her withdrawal rate. So when she starts retirement, she's going to be taking more than 4%. And I know a lot of videos and a lot of articles out there quote the 4% withdrawal rate rule. That's not really a rule, but it's a guideline to follow. She has a higher withdrawal rate, but you can see once Social Security starts kicking in, that's much lower. So it's a normal thing for a lot of people that I work with to have a higher withdrawal rate for the first few years of retirement. And then that pairs back once new sources of income start kicking in, like Social Security or a pension or part-time income or rental income, whatever it is. So with that, we can see that this is fairly successful as a plan. So can she spend $6,000 a month, whatever that is? If we go back to cash flow, it's actually higher at the beginning part of retirement. We can see if we add up these total outflows, that $85,000, that's more than $6,000 a month. We can see by the time Social Security starts to kick in, and maybe even out a little bit further, by the time she's 75, she's spending $10,000 a month. Obviously, that withdrawal rate is changing from the portfolio, but all in all, this is a very successful plan. Anna can spend more at the beginning part of retirement. She can still spend on charity. She can spend on vacations earlier in retirement, and it works out really well. I mentioned Social Security earlier, and I want to spend a moment talking about that because I see a lot of videos out there talking about how, hey, maybe you should claim it early at 62. And I think for a lot of people out there, that is a mistake. I'm not saying for everybody, it can make sense. But if we look at Social Security and compare, what does this mean, including discounted values? And a lot of those videos out there mention, oh, well, it's not using a discount rate. Well, we are discounting the values here. What does it mean to wait until age 70 versus taking it as early as possible? Well, in Anna's case, if she lives to 95, that's $112,000 more over that time frame. If I asked you, hey, if I had a strategy or an idea to get you $100,000 more over your lifetime, would you want to do that? Most people would answer yes. I don't know too many people that would answer no for that. And even if we move this figure up a little bit, let's say Anna passes away earlier. Let's say instead of making it to 95, she makes it to 85, which statistically for a woman, pretty good odds of making it. Now, I know everybody's healthcare and longevity is different. Obviously, the success of the plan goes up there, but that even gets you more in Social Security. Even if she passes away earlier, if I said, hey, you can have almost $40,000 more over the course of your retirement, most people would do that. And by waiting, it's a better hedge for later years. She has to take less from the portfolio with that. So this is a very successful plan. I'm going to set this back just so we have this at 95. But she has a lot of flexibility with the way that she claims Social Security. But in a lot of cases, it's going to make sense to wait because she is going to get that higher benefit. And although she's concentrating risk and taking more from her portfolio early in retirement, so here she's going to instead of that early strategy and getting that, she's going to take it all from the investment portfolio. But what that means for age 70 and beyond is a much smaller withdrawal rate from that portfolio. It's putting less stress on for a longer period of time. The next thing I want to spend a few minutes talking about is just tax planning. So we could see in the cash flow years here, the program is going to assume no tax payment. Essentially, Anna is using that 0% long-term capital gains bracket to recognize income from that brokerage account and take those withdrawals, particularly in early retirement. That works for an extended period of time for her, essentially until those required minimum distributions start to kick in at age 75. So, and I think I misspoke earlier, I mentioned 73. So it is 75 for Anna in this case. But Anna may not want to use that 0% long-term capital gains bracket, because what ends up happening is if we look at her tax bracket throughout life, or an estimate, right now she's in the 10% tax bracket. So if she does nothing, she might be able to use that 0% long-term capital gains bracket. But what does that mean giving up once required minimum distributions start? Well, at that point, it's going to force out enough money that she's in that 22% tax bracket. So she may actually want to consider right here doing Roth conversions, maybe foregoing or maybe splitting years. Maybe 1 year she's using that 0% long-term capital gains bracket. And then another year, maybe this year, the following year, maybe she's doing a Roth conversion. And the next year she's doing the 0% long-term capital gains bracket. And then the next year, Roth conversion. I'm not saying every single year she should do a Roth conversion, but this is where she wants to do this tax projection and decide, what am I comfortable with? If I feel very likely I'll be in the 22% tax bracket later, maybe I don't want to pay nothing in taxes for all those years. Maybe I do want to recognize some income. And what does that look like for her? If we assume that right now we fill up that 12% tax bracket, maybe she converts to the top of that and then just simply recognizes capital gains and pays 15% on those because she's going to pay 22% later. What does that mean in terms of taxes? Well, the program can estimate, and don't get too hung up on the numbers, it's more the concept here, that she ends up $226,000 richer when it comes to taxes. And over her lifetime, she's paying about $129,000 less. So this decision combined with Social Security, Anna has $100,000 decisions to be made here on how she's going to take money from the portfolio. And this is why it's really important to start with her financial plan. And then you can start to layer in, what does it look like for claiming Social Security? What does it mean to defer? And because she's deferring, we actually have room to fill up these tax brackets. If she's taking that Social Security, we have less room within those brackets to fill it up. So all these decisions go hand in hand. And I wanted to highlight why it's important to do this and then start to layer in these other elements. But Anna's in good shape to spend from her portfolio. That's the first step and the first question she gets answered. But then from there, how do we layer in a Roth conversion strategy and Social Security? And once she starts making those choices, this all comes together. I know there aren't a lot of videos for single folks out there. And so if you found this helpful, drop it in the comments down below. What piece was most helpful for you? What would you like to see more of? I can tailor these videos to these types of requests. So it is helpful to hear. And if you feel like subscribing, that's also helpful to the channel and I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching.